Okay, the August the 17th meeting of the Texas Water Well Drillers Advisory Council is called to order. We'll do a roll call. Start with Mr. Gilmore.
Here.
Here, John Poppard.
Lonnie Ball here.
Ray wasn't that here?
Bill Lange here.
Ray Reed here.
Steve Young here.
Okay, we have a quorum. We'll start with the approval of the minutes of January the 5th, 2018 meeting. Everybody take a look at them and see if they agree. If anyone sees anything that they think might need to be changed, let us know.
Mr. President, if there are no additions or changes, I would move they be passed as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wizenhut, second by
Mr. Gilmore.
Mr. Gilmore. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes. Now we'll go to public comment section. Anyone have public comment? Did we receive any?
No, sir.
Okay, if there's none, we'll move on to staff reports. Licensing division.
Hello. My name is Liz Marino, and I'm here on behalf of Lisa Hodak.
Lisa, if you'd pull the microphone closer to you, thank you. Or, I'm sorry, Liz. I just
Liz,
called you Lisa.
my name's Liz Marino, okay? I'm sorry. And I'm here on behalf of Lisa Hodak. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, this report's very brief. I'm going to start with just the total population. For water well driller and pump installer licenses for third quarter is 1,736. Population for water well driller and pump installer apprentice licenses is 520. And approximately 172 water well driller and pump installer licenses are due to expire this month, so I'd like to remind everybody to go ahead and submit your renewals in order to avoid any late fees. And that's all I really have at this time, if you have any questions.
Any questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Customer service division.
Good afternoon. My name is Irma Mendoza, and I'm the Customer Service Manager for the Water Well program. As you can see the report, the statistics are pretty basic during this time. The same, we had a little bit of more emails, and it's just due to incomplete applications, but other than that, it's a standard.
I have a little bit of a question. I just need you to educate me a little bit. I don't understand, but what do you consider a customer?
A customer,
Yeah.
everybody from you members of the board and everybody in the industry that called us for either applications or incomplete applications.
So it
Or
includes
concern.
it includes general public.
Oh,
It's
yes,
not just
yes.
licensees and that
Right.
kind of stuff. So what kind of calls do you get? Are these complaint calls, or what are these? Are complaint emails, or what are these?
No, they just emails on it. They try to renew their license, and for one reason or another, we request more information, so they will email us the information back. So
I
we
see.
process them first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you. Enforcement division.
My division gets the complaint.
Good afternoon. Chairperson Ball, Advisory Board members. My name is Kimberly Davenport, and I'm the prosecutor with the Enforcement Division who's here to bring you my staff report today. And as you know, on the case highlights I gave you, there are 2 agreed orders that were entered since the last time we met here in January, and 1 default order. And regarding the 2 agreed orders, these both involve licensees who had failed to report either to the department or to the Groundwater Conservation District within 60 days from the completion or cessation regarding a well. They were both fined $750. They both paid the fine, and those cases are both closed. Regarding the default order, it was an unlicensed activity default order. This is a second offense for this individual. They were fined $5,000. They have not paid that, clearly. A lot of times with unlicensed persons, finding them's half the battle, and then getting the money from a $5,000 penalty on someone who's not licensed, sometimes a difficult task. Does anyone have any questions about the case highlights that I've noted to you since the last meeting?
I just have a comment. The
Yes.
default order, that name is familiar.
Yes.
I think that person or maybe that family has been up before the board.
I will say that it's a second violation according to the department standards. We have kind of a time frame that if they have a violation within the past 3 years, we consider it a second violation. That's not their first rodeo.
Oh, no.
And they have penalties assessed that if they get licensed, they will have to pay these penalties. However,
Have they ever paid a penalty?
as far as I know, they have not. I noticed I believe they've at least attempted to get a license in the past, but they have orders against them in terms of these penalties that we would try to collect, especially if they try to get licensed. That's going to be part of the hurdle to get licensed, is to pay the penalties that they owe the department.
So that was part of my comment this morning. The people with license, if they do make a mistake, they generally pay for their mistake. It's the unlicensed people that we really have no control over.
That's very true.
So when they thumb their nose up at us like that, then there's nothing. So, I mean, theoretically, anybody in the state can operate without a license.
Mary Winston to the LR. Sorry, Kim, you got the hard question.
You're fine.
So, yes, we are limited because assessing penalties, we can assess them. But if you're not licensed with us, there's a collection issue. But the collection doesn't end with us, and that's a financial thing. That we send our collections, Attorney General? To a third party who collects penalties for the state of Texas through the Office of the Attorney General. It doesn't go away. And that's going to follow them, whatever license they try to get, wherever they go. It is a process to step up. Also, we do have the authority we have injunctive power. So we recently, and our government relations person's back there nodding at me, were able to secure an injunction in another one of our programs. When that happens, there are legal ramifications of that also step it up. You can run, but you can't hide. That's kind of a way to put it. So even if it's beyond TDLR's control, then it's stepped up. There's an attorney general possibility. Then if it's injunctive relief, that gets to a district court. So then it's out of our authority, but you've put yourself in district court. So it doesn't end it's difficult if we don't license you. The difficulty is in finding them, even though sometimes I see that somebody knows where they are. So if we can find them, or if the AG finds them, or the third-party collector finds them, if there's an injunction, you've gotten yourself in district court, then there's another process in whatever, I almost said parish, from Louisiana, county that you're in. So it doesn't end there, but it may end at this level, but it continues on with the state of Texas.
A couple more questions then. When it goes to the Attorney General and he's looking at cases to file, or she, and he's got this $5,000 case, and then he's got a $100,000 case over here against some large corporation, we know which one he's going to do.
Well,
None
it's
is-
really
if-
not a
if-
case of which one. I'll let Charles Johnson, who's the general counsel standing in for Della today.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Charles Johnson, Assistant General Counsel. The comparison you just made is not always a valid comparison because it's not the monetary issues we're raising. We're raising the groundwater issues, and those issues are, I think, beyond the ability to assess a dollar value to them. There's going to be a discussion at the conclusion of this meeting internally to talk about the issues that were raised this morning at the summit, talk about your concerns this afternoon about enforcement and the ability to put teeth into the process. And I think what Ms. Winston was alluding to is that while we can assess penalties, once this gets into the district court, there's contempt power. And contempt power raises the possibility and the prospect of being incarcerated. And so there's an additional incentive. We have to be able to work with the AG's office and to find the cases that warrant that type treatment, but that discussion will take place.
One more question then. Does the water districts, the groundwater conservation districts, do they have more penalty assessment power than the TDLR as far as unlicensed drillers working in their water district?
I cannot speak for those districts, but I can tell you that under our statute, we have the ability to assess penalties of $5,000 per day for each violation. It depends upon the severity of the particular violation, but it's compliance we're really after, not the penalty amounts. And so whatever process it takes to incentivize a person to comply, I think that's our best option, and those discussions will be had.
And also, Mary Winston here, we can also, I think, maybe at our next meeting, maybe have, I'm volunteering people for stuff who aren't here, but a discussion on that process. So it can just kind of lay it out more step by step. And I will notify them and apologize that I volunteered them for this, but to give you a step by step kind of idea, because this is a unique program. They're all unique, but in this case, yes, water affects us all. So when we have unlicensed activity, we have different things here. It's a little different than some of our other programs. But I want our council and I want the public to have an understanding that it's just not a free-for-all. Even though, okay, we can't hold anyone in contempt, not at our level, but it can get up to that level depending on the situation. So we will try to flesh that out a little bit for our next meeting.
Thank you.
One last question. Now, this is Ray Wisenat. Unless I'm mistaken, all of these processes, these points of due process are under civil action, aren't they?
Yes, sir. Well, up to a point, civil in the initial stages, but once a district court enters an injunction prohibiting activity and they engage in that activity, it becomes more of a criminal type proceeding because incarceration is the possible remedy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I guess the remainder of those cases that are open, let's see, what was that? There's like 27 cases that have been resolved, and then 56 cases total. Those that are left open, is there a timeline on when those get done? Will they get done before the end of the calendar year, or no? Or,
We work our
I mean,
cases.
where are you with those, I guess, maybe?
And in terms of those cases, we work all our cases as best we can, giving the attention that we don't have specific timelines. Sometimes we see cases that are more of an urgent nature that may take priority, and we prioritize in that manner, but there's not specific timelines on all those. And we have different attorneys who handle different cases, and they work those cases as quickly as they can, but they have to also give attention to it and have to make sure it's been investigated properly and make sure all the parties have been spoken to. And part of our process is, like Ms. Winston said, is trying to get compliance, and we try to be cooperative with the respondents to get them in compliance as well. So we don't just immediately issue penalties as soon as we get a case. We want to look at it and make sure that we've given all our diligence and the process to the case to properly make sure that we've administered our justice in the case. But there's not a specific timeline. And that kind of brings us to the statistics, which is what you were referring to. And I just took a little look at some of the cases that we have had open in the last fiscal year. And just kind of wanted to give you a breakdown of kind of what we're seeing, just so it's a little outside my report, but just so you have kind of an idea. We see, I would say, the greatest portion of complaints that we have since the beginning of the last fiscal year are consumer complaints that we're receiving. There's about a quarter of them that are criminal background, so we're looking into a licensee or a possible licensee in terms of just to make sure that they don't have 18 murder convictions or stealing by deceit or something that may make them not a good candidate for having a license. And about a fifth of the complaints and cases we've opened look like they're department complaints, where either compliance has opened it or maybe enforcement has opened it because we've seen something that ran amiss of our rules and regulations ourselves. In terms of the types of violations, we see a good number of a little bit of unlicensed activity. We also see where someone hasn't done very good work according to the complainant. I would say most of those are probably consumer complaints where they're unhappy with the quality of the work that's been done. And regarding what we were talking about this morning, there was some regarding not necessarily contamination. I don't know all the scientific, you gentlemen are definitely more the experts there, but regarding complaints about sand or sediment being in the water. There are a few about specific contamination, and then also about paperwork, is the reports being filed. Those were kind of the majority of the complaints that I was seeing that we currently have. As you can see, we've had 3 orders since the last meeting. I think there were a few default orders before that last meeting. And I think those were homeowners who had failed to cap a well, which that's another thing that we see sometimes where they haven't plugged or capped a well that was abandoned, I believe. We've had some warnings that have been issued. Of course, we've seen 5 or 6 at least orders. The criminal history cases sometimes get closed because we say, oh, anything in their criminal background should not basically stand in their way from holding a license. And we've had a few cases that have been closed for insufficient evidence. But as you can see, this is one of the smaller programs as compared to some of our larger programs in terms of numbers, because we do have a lot of licensees in other fields. However, this is just as important as any other field. But the numbers are going to be a little smaller in comparison. And you can see in terms of penalties assessed that 2 of the orders I talked to you about today are part of our statistics, and the penalties collected in this program come from those 2 orders specifically. There are some penalties that weren't collected, and I would say most of those are probably from homeowners that don't have the same hammer against them if it's on their license, because they don't have a license, so there's not the same kind of impact for them to pay it the same way a licensee would have, because it impacts their license. As you can see, as a whole, the department has assessed $2.8 million in penalties and collected close to half of that, which I believe is a pretty good percentage in terms of trying to collect penalties. Do you have any other questions about the statistics?
The 2 statistics were divided in terms of the Water Well Driller Advisory Board and then the rest of the TDLR, is that correct?
The water well, yes, the water well drillers program, and then the rest of the cases
It
or
appeared that
complaints.
we had collected about 7% of our penalties, and the department as a whole about 40%.
Right. And I would say again, because of unlicensed activity or because we can take penalties against people who aren't licensed like homeowners, there's not quite the same incentive they have to pay those penalties. And often they're default orders where they don't even respond to our requests for assistance or to reach back. So that's generally what we're seeing.
And
The
wasn't
default,
Yes, ma'am.
Mary Winston again. I've sat where Kim is sitting, and the statistics that you give about overall collection and then this collection, it is very much the result of, and I can remember as a prosecutor doing those cases, if you have a homeowner or a business owner who's notified that they have that you need to cap this well, you have an uncapped well, that business could have been sold 5 times, and who's now the business owner. It is a web that you weave to try to figure this out sometimes. So the lower amount of collected penalties definitely is very specific to this program, because we do have homeowner situations and different unlicensed, and that's characterized as an unlicensed activity.
If I could ask one more question to go with that. If what we're traveling through in the process of assessment of penalties and collections of them is a civil process, is there not some point at which those fines can become an assessment against the property since it involves a physical factor on that property?
Not from us. That may be an assessment outside of our capability because TDLR is in the box of rules and laws that we
Yes, ma'am.
have. But once it steps up to civil or a criminal penalty or whatever happens, that's beyond our authority. So if it steps up, it's just not a TDLR.
Thank you.
Mr. Piper, did you have a question?
At what point on a default penalty can it become like a failure to pay child support? And you go down to get a driver's license and it's not gonna happen? Is there any way we can have that?
I think it would go back to the possibility of the injunction, because now, if they were a licensee, that's a little different, because of course, you have that ability to say, you can't renew your license, or we're doing something. However, these unlicensed persons, that's why Ms. Winston was bringing up the possibility of the injunction, where the Attorney General, they have some power in terms of taking some sort of action to attempt to collect those. However, we haven't dove quite into that process completely, but we're looking at it to see if we can enforce those as well.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Charles Johnson, again, Assistant General Counsel. When a collection case goes to the Attorney General's office and they pursue it through a judgment, that judgment is then filed with the controller. You raised out the issue about the child support. It actually in that same process. If that person has a state warrant, any money the state owes that person goes to satisfy that order before it gets paid out to the person. So there's a mechanism that looks like and mimics child support, but it's not quite the same.
But we couldn't prevent them from renewing their driver's license or getting a license plate for their vehicles.
Now, I cannot speak to that extent. I do know what happens at the controller's office, but I don't know beyond that. But it's an issue I think worth exploring and get back with you with an answer.
Because that would be a real hammer.
Well, it would speak to 92% of our problem.
Are there any other questions?
Appreciate you breaking that out for us like that. That was,
Thank you.
That was pretty eye-opening for us, I think, for everyone on the panel. And appreciate you doing that. I went to the website. I'm trying to do a little research on this before, and went to the website on the violations and couldn't find a whole lot there. So appreciate you breaking that
Well,
out.
I'm happy
for
to
us.
do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Education and Examination Division.
Good afternoon. I'm Fanny Pringle with the Education Examination Division. My report today is limited to statistics. On the first page of our report is the water well driller and pump installer program total pass rate statistics. We're currently at a 52% pass rate overall. Our next page are the pass rates by each license type. And our last page is the continuing education course provider and curriculum statistics. Currently, we have 13 continuing education providers. Can I answer any questions for you?
Anybody want to offer an explanation why in the second year of our testing statistics here, we had an increase in pass rates, and then in the most recent year, we have a considerable drop in pass rates?
There are all kinds of factors that would come into play for that. We have not studied any specifics with this program. However, the things to consider is that we had a examination review committee, I believe it was this past November, where we updated questions, created some questions. I do have information on that. Let's see here. We reviewed 37 poorly performing items, edited 22 items, deleted 8 items, and created 41 new items. And that was for the general pump exam, the maintenance and repair, the we created a new topic, or renamed a topic from maintenance and repair to diagnostics and repair for consistency. We had, let's see here, for the general well driller poorly performing items, there were 10 of those items. We deleted 4, edited 6, and approved 17 new items. Reviewed 35 poorly performing items for the closed loop geothermal, and deleted 5, edited 24, and created 22 items. Those new items may have been a factor. They would have gone into place right before that quarter where the pass rates dipped. More broadly speaking, there's all kinds of things that are factored in. Their licensee's individual education level, how much the preparation. We don't have a required pre-education course or training for the license.
Recommended only.
I'm sorry?
We do have recommendations, don't we?
Yes.
Yes.
And so because it's a recommendation and not a requirement, we don't know how the licensees, applicants respond to that, if a large group of them are taking that training, or if a large group of them are not taking training, it would fluctuate.
So in just a general opinion, do you feel like the change had more to do with the simple change of materials or with the difficulty of the material?
Without looking further into it, I couldn't say with any accuracy. My personal opinion would be that any licensing program would potentially see higher pass rates if there were pre-licensing education requirements. But we don't have any information conclusive to indicate that.
Thank you.
When someone fails those tests, do they have an opportunity to retake it immediately, or?
They can take it the next day. They have to go on, they have to re-register for the exam, and for their score to be, once they take the exam, they get their scores immediately from the exam site. At the same time, later that evening, the scores are digitally transported to our databases, and then we digitally transport overnight back to the exam provider, PSI, to indicate that they are eligible to retest, and that day they're able to reschedule a retest or reschedule a test for retesting, and there could be a test slot available that day. So that would be the earliest. At the earliest, it would be a 24-hour period.
How many of these numbers here are retakes? What can you help with?
I don't have it in the report, but I can certainly look that up for you. I can go check on that, and then after the meeting, if you want me to provide you with that information.
Oh, just.
So,
for me,
Carla
I don't
James,
know why I
TDLR.
wanna know, but,
We'd be
look
happy
at
to
it in the
provide
next
that
report,
information
yeah.
to you. If we don't get it this afternoon, we'll get it to you via email. And if you would like for us to do a little bit deeper dive on the drop in the pass rate, we'll be happy to do so and present it to you at your next meeting.
That's fine.
We could show a longer period of time. It's not just year to year. It's not very indicative of one thing or another. We could show, if we went back 10 years, we might be able to see a more clear trend of whether scores overall are improving or going down or staying the same.
I have served on a couple of those review of the test questions in the past. And it seems like the goal of the review is the questions that are failed too often are either made simpler or kicked out, and new questions brought in, because the goal has always been to try to get a 50% or greater pass rate on the test.
Well,
And you can't have a common knowledge question. Every answer has to be able to be found in a book. And there's just some people that, some people can't take a test where you have to go into a book and find the answer.
Sure.
Common knowledge is pretty important in the drilling business.
I know that our group is looking towards finding new reference material. All the questions that are on the exams are referenced to a published list of books so that everybody is reviewing the same material, that no one has an advantage. We don't change questions to make them easier or harder. It may seem like that, but in actuality, it's our subject matter experts who decide what the level of expertise is to perform jobs competently and safely. And so if everybody fails, we say, wow, that's great. There's not going to be any unqualified people with a license out there. If everybody passes, that's great, because we can say we got a whole bunch of new qualified people. It's all about what's competency level. As far as how we do have statistics on every single exam question. We do like to see the pass rate on every single question. If the pass rate is very low or very high, we will take a look at it to review it to see if it's low, is there a problem with the question? Are we giving enough information for them to answer the question? Are there more than one correct answers? You know, what did we miss when we put the question out there? And so those kinds of edits will be made. If a question is something that everybody's passing, then we look at it to see if it is something that's a common knowledge that you could answer the question correctly without having any, somebody off the street could answer the question correctly just with common sense. And our SME group makes those kinds of judgments on whether those questions are out there. But the goal is competency. We decide that this is what it takes to be safe and what it takes to be competent, and that does not go up or down. So, is there anything else I can answer for you?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And we move on to the Regulatory Program Management Division.
Hello again, David Gunn. Okay. New division name and leadership. The name of the division has changed from Compliance to Regulatory Program Management Division, RPM. David Gonzalez is our new divisional director, and Lee Parham is our new deputy director, division director. We are finalizing our calibration and program realignment efforts to better serve our customers. Effective June 15th, unfortunately she's not here, but Charlotte Melder began her duties as our new Business and Consumer Safety Section Manager, which now includes the Water Well Driller Program, and Pump Installer Program. Charlotte has many years of leadership experience and prosecutorial experience in our enforcement division, including casework with the program. So she's handled some of the Water Well Driller Program and Pump Installer cases. Current projects. Program staff have been working with the Water Well Driller Advisory Council work group that was appointed at the October 30th, 2017 council meeting to address commingling of groundwater issues. The issue will be discussed later on in this agenda. David Gunn, program manager, provided abandoned well referral data and explanation in response to an internal auditor follow-up. Now we'll go over the meetings we've attended. Program staff attended and managed the information booth at the Texas Groundwater Association Trade Show and Conference in January at the Embassy Suites Conference Center in San Marcos. On January 10th, 2008, Adam Foster, hydrologist, attended and participated in the Texas Groundwater Protection Committee meeting at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Adam also presented continuing education on laws and rule courses on the following dates and location. February 17th in Tyler, March 3rd in Halcomb City, March 24th in Fort Worth, April 7th in Round Rock, April 11th in Midland, April 20th in Plainview, April 21st in Schertz, April 27th in Houston, May 5th in Lubbock, May 19th in San Angelo, and June 1st in San Marcos. On April 11th, I met with some Bayreuth representatives, and they just wanted to discuss some general information about water well drilling related issues. On April the 11th, Adam provided statutes and rules and inspection training to the Permian Basin Underground Water Conservation District staff. On April 12th, I met with Enforcement Division investigative staff and provided laws and rules interpretation on a complaint case where we had to meet with the respondent. On April the 18th, Adam attended and participated in the Texas Groundwater Protection Committee meeting. On June 13th, attended and participated in the Texas Groundwater Protection Groundwater Issues Subcommittee and the Public Outreach and Education Subcommittee meeting. On June, Adam met with Piney Wood Groundwater Conservation District and Rusk County Groundwater Conservation District leadership to discuss requirements. In April, Adam attended the Calhoun County Groundwater Conservation District Board meeting. Recent field activities, since the last meeting back in October, staff performed 37 lead investigations. Those are just called in things we get, or people reporting unlicensed activity or something. 29 consumer complaints that we get from enforcement, 551 random inspections, and 87 abandoned well investigations. And I have issued and reviewed 50 variances in the whole fiscal year of 2018. That concludes it. Any questions?
Ray, wasn't that, David, in no specific numbers, what can you tell us were the generalities or maybe the most common of the variances issued?
Variances, stuck pumps, small lots, can't get 50 feet from the property line because the lot's 100 or whatever, too small. There's a few others, but I can't think of them right now.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Do you ever reject variances?
Yes. In fact, I've even looked at it a little closer on chicken houses. Back a long time ago, they sent in a variance for a chicken house, but as I was looking at it, we found out that all it was chicken house owners wanting to put the wells between the chicken house, but they had other property where they could put the well in compliance. So I denied it and told them they had to put it in compliance first. And that's the way the variants work. It's got to be in compliance if possible. If there is no way they can get it in compliance, then we consider a variance and do it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Hi, David. This is Steve Young. Question. A comment on your abandoned well investigations.
Mm-hmm.
Two aspects. Could you explain what that is and exactly what that entails, and how many abandoned wells can you estimate are waiting to be plugged out there? And is there a need to
There's
try to
a fairly
step that
big
up?
problem with abandoned wells. all over the state.
I figured that.
These are abandoned wells that are reported to us, are found and reported to us. We've worked with TCQ and their field people. We've trained them to identify abandoned or deteriorated wells. So when they're out in the field and they find one, they report it on our online abandoned well reporting system, which we have online, and anybody can report an abandoned well. Anybody. So these are from that database that we get complaints, and we go out there and take a look at the well to make sure that it's indeed abandoned or deteriorated in accordance to what the law says. Because we get some that are just neighbors not wanting neighbors to have this or that, and they're perfectly fine, but they've been capped, you know, and they don't know the rules like we do. So we go out there and look at them. If they are just an abandoned well, we then notify the landowner by mail and give them the allowed time in accordance to the law, which is 180 days. And majority of them, we get them to plug. Those that don't, we then forward them to enforcement to take action against.
So those make it to enforcement only if there's an investigation by the division?
No, well, we look at every one because we have to determine it's an abandoned well. Sometimes we don't have to go, but it's very rare to look at it. If they send in the good enough pictures that we can look at it and determine from the photograph. But we need to determine whether it's an abandoned well, because on the abandoned well reporting system, like I said, anybody can report one. And a lot of times they don't furnish photographs or anything like that. So if Adam's going to an area, we go through that database, pull up that area, any abandoned wells we got in that area, he takes a look at while he's out in the field doing other stuff.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Executive office.
I almost said good morning. We don't want to go backwards, do we? Good afternoon, gentlemen. Carla James, TDLR. I have not had the pleasure of meeting with you all before. I'm relatively new to the agency, about a little over a year and a half, but did want to speak to you real briefly this afternoon about our strategic planning process. I'm not sure, since I haven't been around y'all, if you've been through this process with us before, but state law requires that every state agency go through a strategic planning process every 2 years in preparation for the legislative session. And we do it a little bit differently than other agencies. We go out all over the state and ask some questions and get lots of feedback. We went to 5 cities this year: El Paso, Arlington, McAllen, Houston, and San Antonio. And we also had an online survey that asked those same questions. We got over 8,000 comments back, and we separated those into buckets, as we call them, related to things that are legislative items, items related to rules. We had one for processes. And then we start going through all of those to determine which ones we can do and which ones we can't do. And that comprises our initiatives as we go into the legislative session. So there's this really pretty document on our front page called the Strategic Plan, and that sets up what we think we would like to recommend to the legislature to have a look at. There are a number of items in there. I encourage anyone who's listening and you gentlemen to have a look when you can. But we take these items very seriously. We get information from the general public and from our licensee population, and we ask our staff internally as well, what are the pain points that your customers are seeing and how can we address those? So we're very proud of that document. We've already turned it into the legislature, and I'm sure we'll be addressing some of the items that we put forth to them as session proceeds through. Session starts in January and it'll end in May, so we'll have plenty of time to have discussions with the legislature about these items. It says in here recent developments. We are crazy busy all the time, so I'm not sure a recent development is going to provide you much insight. I think David has likely provided you all the information from recent developments that you're interested in. I don't think that you'd probably be interested in me telling you about the electricians program and the things going on in that. My husband's an electrician, and even he doesn't want to hear that. So I am just ready for any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Guess not, thank you. Commingling Work Group Report.
Good afternoon, Ray Reed. The initial work group meeting was held on February the 9th, 2018. In attendance was Ms. Delia Lindquist, Mr. Lee Parham, Mr. David Gunn, Mr. Adam Foster, Mr. Bill Lange, Mr. Ray Wisnett, Mr. Steve Young, Ms. Siobhan Lopez, and myself. Discussion of commingling in groundwater and how it affects groundwater quality. Texas Oil and Gas Association and Texas Desalination Association representatives spoke at the Waterwell Advisory Council meeting on January the 5th, 2018, regarding their concerns of groundwater. Mr. C.J. Treadway with Texas Oil and Gas Association supports the information of the commingling work group and requested Texas Oil and Gas Association member be placed on the work group. Mr. Darrell Peckham with Texas Desalination Association, definitions of degradation, what is the trigger, what is the level of acceptance, how long can a borehole remain open, 76-100 C6 within 6 months of drilling. Explain the process, was the oversight and responsibilities of other agencies, RRC, TCEQ, and GCD. Advisory Council Work Group was formed consisting of the following council members: Mr. Bill Lange, Mr. Ray Wisnett, Mr. Steve Young, and myself, Ray Reed. Waterwell Driller Program staff, Mr. David Gunn and Mr. Adam Foster. Recommendations made by the work group addressing the commingling concerns were: define degradation as it relates to groundwater quality, identify the amount and time and what conditions must be met for a test well to stay open, what is the minimum requirements, what is the minimum well construction procedure for brackish water. Comments: oil and gas companies go with 1,000 TDS. What about mixing 20,000 MGL with 30,000 MGL brackish water? Discuss the identification of aquifers and zones. Task force could consist of representative and or gather input from the following groups: Texas Oil and Gas Association, Texas Desalination Association, Railroad Commission, the Groundwater Advisory Unit. A geologist, Mr. Bill Gamblin, was recommended. Texas Water Development Board, the groundwater scientist. TCEQ, Public Water Division and or groundwater. Texas Groundwater Association, Groundwater Science Division. Texas Groundwater Protection Committee, consultation and with chairman. Texas Alliance of Groundwater Districts, consultation with executive director. Groundwater protection determination. Groundwater protection, this type of groundwater protection determination, where possible, provides top and bottom fresh water, which is generally less than 1,000 mgl total dissolved solids, and the base of usable quality water, generally 3,000 mgl TDS or less. Other waters known to be used as identified sources of desalinization. This type of groundwater protection determination is used for new drills, cathodic protection, re-entry, well integrity tests, microseismic boreholes, injection into the producing zone, plug and abandon, and conversion of an oil and gas well to a water well. Groundwater protection determination for saltwater disposal wells. This type of groundwater protection determination provides the base of the underground source of drinking water less than 10,000 mgl TDS and verifies geologic isolation from the base of usable quality water. Groundwater protection determination for seismic industry. This type of groundwater protection determination provides a range of depths for the base of usable quality water across the seismic survey. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Not, we'll move on to discussion of summit topics and possible recommendations.
Mary Winston, TDLR. I think Mr. Johnson alluded to the fact, and I think we all have, that we had some very interesting discussions this morning. And our next meeting, hopefully we can discuss some of the things here, penalties for non-licensed people, things like that. But at this time, if there was a topic this morning that those of you who were present heard and you want to move further or have David move further or form a work group or any sort of discussion, this is the place that you can have that addressed.
David, do you have anything?
David? Oh.
Stop. Well, I think we need to have some more stakeholder meetings, you know, get some more people involved, go with some of the recommendations made by the people that were here, you know, include some more landowners and their stakeholders, get some of their representatives involved, and see what happens.
Well, David, I think it's gonna be real important, and you just brought up a good point about the landowners or maybe the Farm Bureau or those people, because, and it's gonna vary in different parts of the state, I understand, but where I'm from, the Texas Panhandle, heavily agriculture area, a lot of stakeholders there, farmers, and we're gonna need that input before we start putting a base on the rules and regulations at the base point. And water districts can take over and enhance that if they want, that's fine, but what I'm getting at is that I think it's real important that we involve those stakeholders, like certainly for farmers or people that raise cattle raisers association, maybe,
Right.
you know, people like that certainly are sure going to have some say-so about that. I think it's very important to do that. And going forward with the 5 points of interest that we started with this meeting about to start with, like defining degradation, like we need to go forward with that and get it done one way or the other. And So if that's what it takes, let's do it. That's where I'm at.
We could schedule another work group meeting, or y'all could tell me to go ahead and notify these other stakeholders, see who all I can get to get involved with it, and then I can schedule a meeting, hopefully before the next council meeting, and get those groups together and have another discussion with representatives that we contacted before, and then any new ones. The Cattle Association, farmers, agriculture, groundwater districts.
That's, the groundwater district's gonna be the most important ones, looks to me
Right.
like, because that's gonna be, it's gonna be so far, it's hard to blanket the whole state anyway, and then water districts are actually gonna take their where they're at and enhance that to make it fit their deal. And
I
we're-
agree.
mean, it looks to me like the most important one would be actually the water district.
We work closely with all the groundwater districts as much as we can. I think if you'll see from the letters we receive from them, that it kind of indicates that. And we provide training to them. Adam, just about every time he goes out, he goes and sees a groundwater district and provides inspection trainings and things like that. So yes, we can go through the tagged Texas Alliance groundwater districts and maybe set up something with them, and then look into some consumer type groups to involve. Agriculture.
What about the regional planning commissions that are set up?
We can do whatever y'all think is necessary. What I could do is get some things together and then send it to our work group, and then y'all could make a recommendation to me from that. And then we could set up meetings or whatever we need to do. I can get some things together and send it to the work group, or however y'all want to handle it. The whole council or the work group. Since we're still with the work group, and the next topic actually discuss something different, I would say stay with the work group, keep working, determine what more they want to do, and we'll, as staff, we'll get it done best we can.
This is Ray Wisden. I'll speak as one work group member, and I realize that my schedule may be a little easier to work with than some of the other members of the work group and/or the council, but personally, we've been working on this almost a year. I'd like to know what you think the time schedule would be to maybe achieve some of these things before the last regular meeting of this advisory council in this current calendar year.
That depends on the number of meetings we need to have. I can get meetings together, it's just that I'm at the mercy of other schedules, Trying to get that many people together is difficult. That's why last time we handled it by letters and emails. And we had some difficulty just getting, responses back for that summit meeting this morning, timelines and things like that.
Well, my point would be, I think if we make an effort to schedule in a linear fashion and start as early as possible, that gives everybody the best opportunity. So what would be reasonable goals to meet between now and the next meeting of the council?
That's really going to depend on the schedule of people. I don't know when your next meeting is.
Mr.
Della.
Chairman, this is Lee Parham. Goal-wise, you said we've been working on this for about a year, and we've kind of...
I should have said dates. My goals are dates, If we're gonna talk about it, let's set dates and
No, I got you.
follow the dates.
No, I got you. We're slowly pinpointing the different issues. We started out fairly broad, and all the different associations and, Texoga and everybody, all the agencies, they provided us with either a letter or some type of information, okay? We need to go through all of that, probably within the next 2 months, okay? And fine tune if we really want to go forward with those 5 issues or not, or pick out 2 or 3 and say these are the most important. Now, the definition of degradation is going to be pretty tough. It's going to be a rough one, just based on, some of the other definitions and what we've seen over the years. So, to answer your question, I think within the next 2 months, we can fine-tune what we're going to go forward with, and then by probably, by the end of the year, we'll have it laid out. Now, we have to build in, if there's recommendations for rule changes, we're gonna have to build in the timeframes for the rules.
Process of notification.
On the tail end of it. So I'm thinking by the end of the year, calendar year, we can have a pretty good idea of if we have these the recommendations we come up with, or there may not be any recommendations.
Well, or we could decide out of that group which is the most important to move forward
Yes, sir.
first.
Lee, I think the word degradation, I can already say it, is very closely tied to the word quality, which is used well and many times in our rules.
We use the term quality degradation.
Quality needs to be more closely defined as what it means. Because quality to me might be a Chevrolet and quality to you might be a BMW. And it's the same way with water. What I think is a good quality of water may not be what you think is a good quality of water. So that word needs to be more specific in what quality means.
Right. I mean, and depending on what quality you're at, you can always degrade it, no matter how terrible it is to start out with.
But we don't say that in our rules. We just use the word quality. And that needs to be changed.
I received more comments today after our meeting this morning, so I would think we need to set up another work group meeting, define what we're going to go forward with and where we want to go. And I think we can do that within the next couple of months, get the work group together, hopefully, and set that up, and then we'll have a better idea where to go from there.
Once this is Lee, and once that is done, we can gather information from different groups by letter, by email, by whatever. I mean, we don't have to meet. We can just be gathering more information based on the issues that we pinpoint.
We can do that.
And doing as much of it as electronically as possible is fine with me, but I'm just one member. So, the other members need to state their preferences, but I think that gives us a process to gather information for the process to move forward, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Charles Johnson, Assistant General Counsel. In order to expedite your discussions, if you want, there's no need to actually meet in person. The work groups can have conference calls and use the technology at your advantage to facilitate and keep on schedule.
Well, very few people these days can say they can't be reached by phone, so.
Yes, sir.
I'll schedule something and send y'all an email out.
You want to schedule teleconference call? I think that'd be preferred.
That would be,
Probably.
it'd be outstanding for somebody
Yeah.
like me anyway.
Yeah, I talk a lot better than I type, so.
We have an established work group, but it's at your pleasure. Do you want to go with the work group, or do you want me to, schedule the whole council?
I think that'll be a determination of the
I would say
non-work
go
group members.
with the work group.
Okay.
I think, Carla James, TDLR, we need to go with a work group to avoid a quorum. without a public meeting.
Right.
So David, what's the timeframe? I agree with Ray. We would like to move this as quick as possible. I think most of us could be available for a phone call sometime in the next 2 weeks, if you could aim for that.
I can start working on next week and probably within the next week after that.
That'd
If
be
I
great.
get it all together, I'll send you an email and you can tell me with some dates that we can do and we'll set it up.
Very good. Thank you.
I get a lot of emails from Delia. Delia's good help, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, David. Recommendations for the agenda items for the next council meeting. Obviously, there needs to be an agenda item for what the work group comes up with. Any other ideas for agenda items?
Mary Winston, I think one of the items we discussed earlier was penalties and how they move through and kind of that process from enforcement through on through. So we'll make that an agenda item as well.
Thank you.
And I know we wanted some more numbers from education and examination. And that can probably be put in their report, but I've made a note just to remind them. I don't think it needs to be a separate item.
Well, if there's no other recommendations for agenda items, we can discuss a date, time, and location for the next council meeting.
If you'll bear with us for just a minute, we'll provide a couple of possibilities so we can meet in this room. It's a very busy room.
And the question, Mary Winston again, I keep saying my name because we're supposed to. I haven't bothered y'all
I
too much
apologize
because
for not.
you've had a long day today. But we don't have to set a date today. We can actually have Delia contact you. We have a meeting that's going to be called the next couple of weeks with the work group. We'll kind of know more about when that work group meets, more about what we have to discuss. And we can actually set a meeting at that time. So you can get an email or phone call in about 3 weeks to see what is a good date for your next meeting. You don't really have to set anything today.
Again, this is Ray Wisman. I just state that my best days currently until December 31st of this year will be Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Mr. Chairman, this is Lee. I think this morning was one of our better meetings over the past, I don't know, 20 or 30 years that I've been around. It was a lot of good information was given to us. And on such a big, wide-ranging topic like this, we needed a little bit of guidance to kind of pinpoint, kind of have a target. And I think the information that was provided by all the different agencies and associations have really helped us. It's really helped staff, to kind of think this through. So I think it was a really good meeting this morning and this afternoon too.
All right, thank you, Lee. If there's nothing else, we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Gilmore, second by Mr. Reed. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.